Good evening. Welcome to Sims at a Date. Tonight we speak to someone who has made a name for herself as a champion for consumer rights. Someone who speaks her mind and who gets the job done. We are pleased to be joined this evening by the recently appointed Minister for Industry, Trade, Tourism, Local Government, Housing and Community Development, the Honourable Premila Kumar. Premila, thank you for joining me on the show.
Thank you for inviting.
Thank you. So first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Getting into Parliament, being appointed Minister, one of the 10 women in Parliament. How was the election experience, the election campaign for you?
I would say the campaign was very interesting from the day the nominations were announced and throughout the campaign period. And it was interesting to see how things change as soon as you join politics. And one thing I noticed...
As soon as you take a side, so to speak.
Yeah, you're no longer neutral because you're now with a political party. And one thing that did come to my attention, or you can say, it did strike me, was when suddenly you are not doing, you are a bad person, you did nothing in the past just because I was associated with Fiji
Basically
First.
the negative things
The negatives started coming up, yes, yes.
So
and of course, I also noticed that if you're not in someone's favorite political party, then obviously you are not worth anything.
The relationship gets broken?
The relationship gets broken. You tend to get more calls after winning the election than before when you were nominated.
So it takes a lot of bravery and courage to jump into it, you'd say? I mean, you put yourself under increased spotlight, especially in social media and...
It requires a lot of courage to come out, particularly for women, I would say. And a lot of decision needs to be made before you jump into politics. So
why did you jump in? You were doing well as the CEO of the Consumer Council, held over a decade, I think 12 years to be exact. So why did you jump in? What made you say, okay, I'll take all these, I'll make all these sacrifices, I'll handle all this and I'll get in?
See, Consumer Council is all about advocacy work where you're pushing for policy reform. You want things to be changed. And under my leadership, I have changed a number of policies. For example, just simply putting cooking gas under price control. It was a challenge in itself. It took 6 years to realize that. And then the other one was the Data Bureau. There were lots of complaints, and how do you control that? And how can you make
and it was quite
such
a battle
institution?
With the financial industry.
Absolutely. And the last one, in fact,
which happened... to implement that bureau.
Yeah. And the last one was the Accident Compensation Commission. This was for the third party. So I realized that, you know, it's something, if you're passionate about, Parliament is the place for policy making, and if you're there, you can do it quickly. Because advocacy means that you're going to put it on the agenda, make this realization, and then things can happen on the ground. You felt
you could do more?
Correct.
And why Fiji First?
Fiji First, for obvious reason. I have been seeing a number of achievements for Fiji First. The first one I would say is the economic growth of the country, despite natural disasters, despite global financial crisis. We have seen the unemployment rate coming down, and basically what they believe in, which is to share the benefits. Yes.
Because a lot of people had seen you, you know, when you were trying to change policies and bring reform, like a lot of people had seen you as a strong critic and a thorn on the side of governments. In the last few years, many said, observers said, it looked like Premila has changed tactics. She's become more engaging with the government. And plenty of the policies we saw coming out of the budget, a lot of the journalists were saying, this looked like Premila had a say in it. And obviously, so did you change tactics? Did you find a more receptive ear with this government?
I think people just saw it differently. I was much more vocal in the initial years because at that time we didn't have an elected government. So when politicians came in, it became basically their job as well.
So you were quite harsh on the government when it was unelected before 2014?
There has to be a check and balances, so probably I was. But later on, I expected the politicians to do their job. But besides that, some of the issues that I was raising, I could see that the government was listening.
Okay.
And they delivered. And that's what I want. I mean, if it benefits consumers, why not?
And then so obviously you felt joining them in government, you could do more.
At that time, no. It wasn't that I decided in the last 2 years to join them. There was nothing like that. I never decided to join politics in the first place. Otherwise, I would have fought the election in 2014.
Right.
So that was not the intention. But after spending 12 years in Consumer Council, that was a very long stay, and it actually went against my own philosophy, where I stay only 4 or 5 years in one institution and move on.
There had been talk during the years that you were trying to move on.
Yes, and then I stayed with the council simply because I felt that there were a lot of unfinished business. And one area which I'm very, very passionate, and I still feel it's a job that's yet to be completed, is the financial services. And while at the council, I've managed to get on the government's agenda the review of the Consumer Credit Act. So all that led to this realization that, you know, why not join politics? Because then you can do things faster.
When did you make that decision? Because you resigned in June, July? July. By then you had decided that you would join Fiji First?
It was you can say around April of this year. That's when I made the decision.
All right. So election, you secured 1379 votes. You got the 7th highest number of votes of the 27 Fiji First MPs. There's been a lot of criticism of the low number of votes secured by the Fiji First MPs compared with their SADALPA counterparts in general. So do you think that the system we have is fair in the way the representatives of the peoples are elected? I mean, we have some ministers who are just over 500, who have half of what you have. What do you think of the system? Is it still a good system for us to elect our representatives into
I think we have to look at it very broadly. The fact that we have moved away from constituency,
and
now
ethnic,
Fiji is just one constituent, and anyone can vote from any place, and we have moved from ethnic voting line to one person, one vote. So from that perspective, I believe it's a good system in the sense that we don't line up in ethnic groupings when we are voting. So that's one thing. And secondly, before when you have this constituency, the tendency was that as a minister, I will try and develop that area. Why? Because in the next election, I'll get votes from that area. And what had happened in the past was that rural and maritime areas were neglected. And it's a fact. That's why we have got a lot of rural-urban drift. So that was the problem there. Whereas this system has improved that. Now, in terms of high votes and low votes, I would say that it's the strategy. Every party has its own strategy. Fiji First strategy is to promote the leader. And we have been doing that because of strong leadership qualities. And
then therefore you came in on the votes of the leader because of the number of votes that he won.
We were promoting the leader, and the idea was that any political party or any government, if you don't have a strong leader, there'll be internal bickering and the whole government can collapse.
I don't want to get involved in the electoral debate and the strength and strength of the system because some people have a different view about the constituency issue. But moving on. You won the right to get into Parliament, and then you were appointed minister. How were you informed of your appointment? Were you consulted, or were you told, okay, Premila, we have faith in you to handle these portfolios?
I think it's just like any other organization. When something is given to you, there are two reasons as to why a particular position is given to you, because they already have your CV, they know your strengths, and therefore they will definitely give you that particular job. And same thing happened in my case, because my CV was there. We had, during the interview process, we have discussed what we wanted to be and what was our strengths and weaknesses. So all that was taken into consideration.
Was this the portfolio you wanted, or you had been thinking of something else? Was there other things that you had been interested in?
In fact, I wasn't thinking of anything. I wasn't.
Really? I mean, you're getting into government, surely you would have had some area that you want.
Because if you look at my background, I have worked in many sectors.
You could be dynamic and fit in anywhere.
Yeah. And being at the Consumer Council itself gave me insight into other government departments as well. So I wasn't sitting there and saying, okay, I must get that particular portfolio. Nothing like that came across.
Was there any message given to you when you were given these portfolios, which we will go into that? Was they said, look, this is one, any targets were set for you from the Prime Minister?
Of course. Becoming a minister doesn't mean that you just walk in and do what you want to do. Obviously, just like any other job, in my case, simply the job description has changed, and based on the job description, the targets have been set, and I have to deliver those targets throughout.
So you're told these are targets you have to get?
Oh, yes.
So during the election, before we go to the break, the opposition and the media criticized the Fiji First Party, saying it was a party of two. Only two people are running the country, the Prime Minister and the Attorney General. The rest are just there. You've heard this before, obviously, during the campaign. But your experience, you've come into the party. How does Fiji First actually run?
Actually, that is the work of the opposition. They will try and say whatever they want to give a very bad image to the opposition. My experience has been very, very different. There's a consultative process. We discuss issues. We come to a consensus. So it's not a two-way process. And I find it very strange that people are talking from that perspective. And I see that as a very narrow view. Because in any organization, you have the chairperson and the CEO. So in a political party, you also have the party leader and the general secretary.
Who makes the final decisions. But
exactly.
So you're saying it's consultative, you have a strong cabinet, everyone is involved in making decisions.
Yes, the cabinet is there. We have ministerial meetings where we discuss things. And in fact, a ministerial meeting will be held next week. So it's going to be consultation, discussion.
So it's not what the opposition is saying that the way it is?
No, they're extremely, I'm saddened to see that they have got that view. And I also understand why they want to portray that. It's only for political mileage. But being there and working with this party, I don't see that at all.
All right. We are with Premila Kumar. Don't go away. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back. You're watching Simpson at 8. We're with the Minister for Trade, Industry, Trade, Tourism, Local Government, Housing and Community Development, Honorable Premila Kumar. Now that's a mouthful. No? Industry, Trade, Tourism, Local Government, Housing and Community Development. Now everyone knows you're a strong and capable person, but that's quite a lot. How are you planning to manage all three at the same time?
I mean, one has to understand that what is the role of a minister. We are involved in policy work. Implementation is done by civil servants. And for that, we've got Permanent Secretary and his team, or her team. So for three different ministries, we've got three sets of staff led by the Permanent Secretary.
Right.
So my role is to see that the policies that are agreed to and endorsed are implemented. And if there is any bottleneck, any issues, then I have to step in and solve that.
So you're comfortable, it's not too much, it easily managed? Because these are quite important industries. You've been given some really important portfolios, you know, like for the government. So
these are the challenges.
That's the challenges,
yes.
Yeah. Because the concern some will have is, look, you may get bogged down, you may be tied down with tourism, and may leave local government, you know, aside for a while. So how do you intend to handle that?
I just want to say that I'm not the only one in that ministry. There's a whole team.
So it's not just all on you?
Yes.
Although the buck will stop with you?
Absolutely. But I've got very capable permanent secretaries, and they should be able to deliver that.
Right. Just before I go to the issue of the permanent secretaries, you are holding the portfolios just the two ministers held in the last government. In terms of Mr. Fayaz Koya held industry and trade and tourism, and Parveen Bala had local government and housing among his portfolios. Your first week, and I know you're saying, Stan, I don't think I'm ready, it's just my first week, but I said, no, Premila, let's just talk about what your ideas are. What did you know, how did you spend your first week in charge of these ministries?
First week was all about meeting different permanent secretaries, talking to them, understanding the work of that ministry. So it was more for listening. And after listening,
trying
of
to make
course,
sense of.
after listening, you can also work out the strategies you need to put. So that's all I was doing. I was just listening and trying to get more information out, and then strategizing as to what needs to be done.
For the way forward.
Yes.
You will be dealing with 3 permanent secretaries. They've just had their appointments confirmed, I think, this week, the last few days. That'll be you dealing with Joshua Wycliffe in terms of housing and community development.
Oh, no.
No, he will be replaced in January.
Yes.
By Sanjeev Pereira, who's from Sri Lanka.
Correct.
Local government, Joshua will handle that till there's
An
a
appointment.
replacement. And then, of course, Shaheen Ali, he's been there for a very, very long time. These are the very qualified permanent secretaries that you have?
Very qualified. Mr. Shaheen Ali has been in civil service for a very long time, and he's been running the ministry extremely well, extremely well. He's been involved in trade negotiations. He's also involved in the investment work, and he's well versed on the issues of the ministry, and there are a number of projects that's being undertaken to improve the ease of doing business, and also areas where we can reduce or rather assist investors to settle in quickly and start their projects.
All right. For Pereira, he's from Sri Lanka. A lot of people wondering, don't we have anyone locally who can take on that position? Or why? What skill sets does he bring that has got him into the position?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that because that's not my
appointment. By the civil
yes,
service,
so I won't be able to answer that.
Okay. Let's talk about the specific ministries then. I know you're still settling in, as you've mentioned, but let's talk about some of your priorities. Industry and trade, you've also have a distinguished career as a trade and investment facilitator. So what are some of the things, based on what you've heard, that you'll be looking to implement or achieve in that area of industry and trade?
I think one of the biggest criticism we have is the ease of doing business and the World Bank
I think
ranking.
we dropped in those rankings.
Yes. So this is where a major change needs to take place, and already we have got the Singapore team in the country who is working on this particular area.
Sorry, there's a team from Singapore that's looking into how we...
Yes, how we can improve our rating, and how can we do that better.
Right.
Because over the years, within civil service, there is a problem of being territorial and not sharing information or just blaming one another. So there has to be a lot of transparency as to how we can give a business license quickly in a shorter period of time, or for that matter, we have to also look at the fee structure, but that's another level which is mainly to do with the micro, small and medium enterprises. That area too needs improvement, and again we are working with the local government. So in a way it's good that I'm the Minister for Local Government as well. There are some cross-cutting issues, so coordination is required, and being there you can coordinate the two ministries well. With these small micro enterprises, one of the problem is the requirements for business license. As a small entity, they're required to meet same old criteria as the bigger entities.
Okay.
And also the business license fee, which is same for every business.
So making it easier, create more investment, create more small, mid enterprises, and of course it leads to jobs.
Yes.
So if 2 years' time I had you back on the show, how would I measure you? By seeing us improve on our rankings? By seeing us business getting to do, created much better? How would you measure yourself from 2 years from now?
2 years is a very short time.
Right.
Because these are mammoth tasks. It's not like, okay, let's make these changes and it'll be rolled out immediately. Remember, it involves a lot of stakeholders.
Right down on the line.
Yes, and there has to be a change in the attitude. We have to look at people's skills and get them on the same page for them to understand as to why all these changes are being made. And it requires a lot of investment. So do remember, when we talk about ease of doing business, it's not just Ministry of Industry and Trade, it's all the municipalities as well. So that transition needs to take place.
So it'll take a few years. It won't happen overnight. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it will take time. Because the idea is, like, for example, building permits. The idea is to create a portal online through a digital means where the plans are placed and it goes to all the approving authority. So from one portal, they can all give the approval and there'll be a timeline. So it requires legislative changes. It requires mind shift in the way they do the current, performing the current job.
And consulting, obviously, with the industry stakeholders.
Yes, there will be a consultation with construction industry, engineers,
and all that,
architects, and the various government agencies
that are involved
as well. Yeah.
Obviously, we're going to be broadly going through things. So, tourism, Fiji's biggest revenue earner, key to economic growth. We have set targets that some say haven't been met. We were targeting having 1 million visitors. By 2016, we are up to 840, 850,000. We also have a target of 2.2 billion to be reached by the end of 2020. You're looking to develop new markets, obviously, in Asia, particularly China. So where do you see the industry heading and how are we on track to meet our targets?
I think the industry is heading very well. We should not be stuck with the tourism number that, we want 1 billion tourists and at the moment...
1 million, sorry. Yeah.
And at the moment 1 million, yes, sorry, and we have got 800 plus. We have to look at the dollar value of the industry, and we are almost like 2 billion already.
Almost 2 billion.
Without reaching 2020 yet. What does that tell us? It simply tells us that we are attracting more tourists based on quality than quantity.
In terms of spending power.
Spending power, and that's what we should be focusing on, because that will bring greater benefits to the country than just targeting the number. Because
but it still is a good target to try and reach 1 million.
It is. But we need to be careful.
Some would argue, just because government is not reaching it, some would say they're moving the goalposts.
So you tell me, why should we be focusing a lot on the number when we are generating that revenue already? The idea of that number was to generate the revenue. But if we are generating that revenue, then the number...
So the number was tied to the revenue target as well.
Exactly. Because you see, if you're going to allow lots and lots of tourists to come in, the problem will be on our environment. Because we are already 800,000 people, it will have pressure on our sewage system, waste disposal. There will be a lot of pressure on our environment. Are we ready for that? So if you look at it, a good example I always give is a place called Kuta in Bali. And because of the environmental pressures, the environment is destroyed and the number went down. And that's the last thing we want.
That's the last thing you want to do.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure we are ready for increased number of tourists. Are you saying that we are not ready for that increase in number now?
Look, we have to go gradually, and that was the intention of that policy, right? But at the end of the day, what matters to us is the revenue generation.
Right.
So we are on target with that.
You're on target for the 2.2 billion by end of 2020.
Correct.
The concern also many have is not just seeing the industry grow, but also that you're able to absorb external shocks, because that could be devastating for the industry. So you have to be striking that balance in terms of how you're handling it. Now, one of the it's the engine room of Fiji's economy, as they said. Operators, one of the things that's been criticized, they're saying, is that's high tax levies. They said it eventually falls on consumers. They're stating that it discourages returnees and visitors who opt for cheaper destinations like Bali in Indonesia. So we have VAT, we have STT, we have ECAL. They talk about the import taxes on wine, and in terms of which increase the price of the cost of doing business. Will you be looking, it's early days, but is this something you're looking to talk with them about, seeing how they can manage with what the government has imposed on the industry?
I think we need to be very practical about things here. STT and ECAL has been levied only on businesses. Turnover is over $1.25 million. So it's not affecting smaller businesses.
All right.
Right. So that's
so when government moves. Sorry, just so I can. So when government post STT, initially it was on across the board.
Correct.
At 10%.
Yes.
Then it was moved down to 6%. Is it, I think that's...
Okay. I think what we need to look at currently is the application of STT and ECAL. So what I'm saying is it's based on the turnover. So if
of
it's
1.25 million annual turnover.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that means these tourist operators are not, they're not affected. But the reason for STT ECAL, we have to understand is very, very important, because this money is diverted towards climate adaptation. So some of the bridges, some of the seawalls that had to be constructed, roads towards tourism sector where they are mainly operating, all that need to be fixed. And
yes.
This is the money that is going towards that.
One of the issues when we spoke with the industry operators, they say, yes, if that goes to that, that's good, but we are not seeing how that money is implemented. We want to ensure that money is indeed going towards what the stated purpose was. Yes,
it's just they're being naive, because it must be understood that money is not going into government's coffers. It has been monitored and looked after by Reserve Bank of Fiji. And there is already a document...
And it's kept specifically for that purpose.
Specifically for climate adaptation.
Right.
Specifically for that. It's not used for anything else. And then there is a document out which shows exactly where that money has been used. And that document is on the website.
Right. So, great. We will get to that, and I'm sure as you spend more time there and talk to the industry, we'll see more come on that. Now, housing and community development. It's a new ministry, just actually formed this year, and it is to bring all the functions of the housing and rural housing unit all under one roof now. It is the housing now. People saying is one of the greatest social issues of the country, because people are struggling to find it. I know you haven't really said much with the team, but how do you see, what are some of the ideas you have coming forward in addressing this?
I think the ideas are already formulated. The idea is to have strata titles where people can own a unit and they can live on it.
You can explain that for the audience, the strata titles.
Okay, it's like this. If we're going to start off with housing and community development, the idea was to regularize, particularly informal settlements, and also to upgrade the informal settlements. Yes. Yeah. And we have around 122 squatter settlements around the country. Yeah. There is a huge challenge in terms of...
Some people have a different number, but it is a lot.
I may be wrong, because as I said, I haven't really met my team. Yeah. But this is the number I had previously, and things might have changed. Sure. So that is the work of the ministry. Now we have to see how we can use land better and develop a low-cost housing for the low-income earners. And the idea is to have units built. And within that complex, you have a hall, you have a playground for the kids, and you have a management team to manage the strata. A wholesome environment, so to speak. Yeah. So here, individuals will be given a unit. It's with the strata title, which means they own that unit.
Within the building?
Yes, within the building. Like you own a house on the land. So here the land is one land, but the building, which has got number of units, a person can own that unit. You have a name on it. You can sell it. Right. You can buy it.
So it's not just renting, it's actually you're paying off a unit. Yeah, it's your own
property. It becomes your own property. So we would like to move in that direction. And there is a lot of discussions going on. And if I'm not mistaken, as I said, please forgive me, because I have really not gone into discussions with the ministry yet.
Me and the audience and I will understand.
Yeah. Because you pulled me out too soon. Good.
So you would be looking at some things like high-rises, like how they have
Yes, and I understand that
they're looking to FNPF.
FNPF as a partner, but at the same time, they are also looking at Davulevu for one of those strata housing.
Local government, before we go to the break. Again, one area that the Fiji First government has been criticized on, particularly the municipal elections. Long delays, many years now. Some say too long. And they said it's affected services within local communities. They talk about the lack of governance. How do you plan to move quickly to address this?
I just want to make it very, very clear. That's one area I had a thorough look at. And what I have found, if you look at the legislation, we've got like Local Government Act is 46 years old. At that time, we didn't even have Nasinu Town Council and some of the other councils. And when you look at the Town and Country Planning Act, it's like 45 years old. Then we've got subdivision of, mainly most of these legislations are 40 years old, right? So, and if you look at the function of the municipality, unfortunately, they don't have a very clear vision of how the municipality needs to grow and how you manage the different expectations of the ratepayers. All that is not really factored in properly, in my view, and that needs to be taken into consideration. And I strongly believe that what we need to do is a institutional reform, a complete institutional reform, where the mindset of individuals working for municipality, they need to change. But to support that, we got to have the legislative reform.
So legislation, better planning, but that shouldn't affect the elections being held. I mean,
of course it will affect, because you don't want the councillors to come in and operate on the old legislation, right? So we need to modernize the legislation so that we have a very clear-cut role of the councillors,
doing the legislation and the planning, as you say, that's a few years.
Yes.
So you're looking at more delays into the elections of the municipal councils?
If that's what it means, it would be like that.
It'll be like that. Because, you know, there's a poll ran back there, but they said, people saying, we want to be run by our local councils, which are more relevant to us. It's easier to get things done with them. They're more accountable to us.
If that was the case, Stanley,
we don't want the government so micromanaging from, you know, from a central location.
Actually, government is not micromanaging. I can tell you one thing: there is a CEO and the special administrator who are managing the show.
But they are unelected as yet.
Yes, but even with the election, you have the mayor and the councillors, and then you have the CEO who's running the show. It's just like any other institution, like statutory body, where you have the CEO and the board. So you may say the chairman is like the mayor, and the directors are like the councillors, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it. That's
but
what
appointed by. Sorry, one is appointed, one is elected. Yeah.
Appointed by. I mean, elected by the people. But one of the problems we have seen with that setting as well is that the municipal councils become very politicized, and not necessarily that they will deliver what they were delivering. So we need to manage all that and get a legislation that can make the mayor, the councillors, the CEO more accountable. I'll give you an example. Previously, the bylaws were passed by the councillors. In a little room, they sit and make decisions, and these are bylaws. And they make these bylaws, and the public had no idea what those bylaws were, right? So when they apply for something, they come to the municipal council, then they're saying, oh, but we cannot approve this because there is a bylaw. Now, we don't want that kind of a system.
Right.
Right? So we have to look at the whole review process, because, you know, the rest of the world has moved on. And as I can say, in the past, we had rural local authority. That came under Ministry of Health. It's only from this year the rural local authority has been shifted to local government, and that makes sense. So, and I'll give you another example when it comes to boundaries.
Yeah.
If you look at Singatoka town, Duvu is not part of the town boundary. So we have to look at the boundary as well, so that we can involve a lot more.
So I know, but so the issue you have is you want to do the legislation first, get the planning, then have the elections.
Correct.
So that's the process.
Correct.
Not have the elections and get the local government themselves trying to implement that.
Yeah.
You know,
all right. And this will be through a consultative process where we have the ratepayers and the business community involved, the citizens involved.
Because a lot of people are saying we want to move quickly on this, but you're saying do it properly.
I believe that we must do it properly once and for all, and it will be done through a very wide consultative process. So everyone will get a chance to say what they want in a municipal council and how it should be.
And then move on from there.
Yes.
We're with Premila Kumar, We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. You're watching Simpson at 8. Now, Premila Kumar, you gave your maiden speech last week.
Yes, I did.
21 new MPs in Parliament, and so a lot of maiden speeches. So what was the experience like? What were the issues you touched on?
I actually touched on my upbringing. I talked about my parents, my family, why I got into politics. It was very personal, and maiden speeches are meant to be personal. So that's precisely what I did.
You also talked about your hopes, the things you wanted to see get done. In the last Parliament, there were, people say there was a lot of arguing, and there was a lot of heckling and shouts from across from the south. People said, we want to see proper debate. Is that something you will be hoping for in this Parliament? Well,
that's how things happen in Parliament, and Fiji is not unique to it. I mean, thank God we don't have fights, in other parliaments.
It's coming
there is a
close
fist fight.
to some of it.
I don't think so. I mean, my experience was quite positive. Normally when you sit in the parliament or you see on the television, it appears that the parliament is very big and the opposition is sitting very far away from you. Actually, no, they're sitting right in front of you. And you exchange smile, and it's a nice collaboration.
They also shout things at each other from time to time.
Yeah.
But what did you make? You're in government. What did you make of the speeches by the opposition? Did you feel that they made some contributions that you would consider?
Yes, they made some contribution. There were very few speakers who made very positive contribution. Others were still very negative. Yes, they were still in the past, whereas there were few who wanted to move forward. So I have no issues, engaging with them, understanding.
You're willing to reach across the aisle and say, let's work together?
Yes. During tea time, we normally meet one another and we talk.
Okay, because I know that some directly mentioned you, said we want to work with you on the housing issue, so you're ready to work with them.
Oh, absolutely, why not?
On one issue, you were accused of misleading the public. And, when you even were speaking, the opposition says, oh, they started to make some noise. You stated, let me tell them that in the past there was no option given by the state to allow parents to send their children to university or tertiary institutions. One had to born in a rich family or an influential family to get a scholarship, which was based on race and provincialism, or parents had to draw from the FNPF. And some MPs posted on Facebook, someone said they were recipients of FB scholarships and public service scholarships. They came from rural areas. They earned. They think so, they said, oh, Premila is misleading the public. I'd just like you to give you a chance to respond to
I will never mislead the public. Let's get the facts right here. You have been in the country for a very long time, Stanley. Did we have any loan scheme before where you and I could borrow take the money from the government? Here we have scholarship.
There was no loan scheme, but there was scholarship.
But does that mean that everyone can get scholarship? There were limited scholarship. Again, based on ethnic line.
And some are based on merit as well.
Very little, because normally what happens is this, that if you are from a particular province, you have the opportunity, influence worked. And not everyone had that equal opportunity to go to university. My friends who were very bright did not get the scholarship, the parents didn't have the money, and they didn't go to university at all. But now the situation has changed. Even if you're born in a very poor family, at least they can take the loan from the government and send their child to university. This provision was never there.
So it's much better, and you stand by your statement that you made.
Absolutely, I do.
Now, one of the issues, we discussed most of your portfolio in the last one, but one that we didn't touch that I'd like is community development. So what exactly is community development?
Community development
it means community development, but what exactly?
It simply means, like, if we are going to introduce strata titles, where we will
that's why it's youth housing.
Yes, and even otherwise, when we are looking at subdivision, we want to develop a subdivision for housing purposes. It's very, very important that we should have proper roads, proper electricity, we should have playground for the kids, a community gathering, sort of place where the community can have their own
so it's not
functions.
not just a concrete jungle, so to speak, and
Yeah,
not just
not
a
a concrete,
crowded...
yes. So the idea is to bring the community together, and what would be some of these facilities as part and parcel of that plan that will allow the communities to engage more.
All right. Everyone has talked about your great qualifications experience. You have a Bachelor of Science degree from India, postgraduate diploma and postgraduate certificate from USP, Master of Science in Trade and Environment from Netherlands. In 2010, you were awarded Fiji Times Award for the Most Influential Woman of the Year. 2012, Fiji TV Popularity Contest in the country. You even beaten by Nemrama in that.
I have no comment
contest,
on that one.
Right. In 2015, it did happen. Now you were named Woman in Business Executive Women of the Year. I'm sure you remember that for your work in the Consumer Council. But in your maiden speech, as you mentioned, you talked about how it was your parents and your upbringing that inspired you. The social work that your parents did, your father's travels to the outer islands. And I think many people don't understand it's the personal experiences, these upbringings that mold how people are today. So before we end the show, your message to to parents, to young people, to mothers, and people who look at you as a role model, even though you may not see yourself as one, but people who look at you, what's your message about basically becoming successful?
Well, if you're going to ask me that question, to become successful, it's simply hard work. Nothing comes on a silver platter. At least it didn't come to me like that. I always worked hard, and any job that was given to me, I did that. Never questioned my superiors as to why I'm expected to do this when it's not in my job description. I was always in the learning mode. Always wanted to do things differently. Always wanted to, and I always did that, think outside the box, and that made me successful.
And that's the approach you bring to your ministries for the next 4 years.
Exactly. The passion is very important. You've got to be passionate about what you do, and motivation. If these things are lacking, then obviously a person can just do the job just to tick the boxes. It might not be quality, but yes, I've done it.
Going beyond the call of duty. Premila Kumar, thank you for joining me on the show.
Thank you, Stanley.
All right. That was the show for the evening. As usual, Nimi is up next with Talimangimangi, but I look forward to having you join me again next Sunday at the same time. Good night.